Check, check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear us loud and clear? Going on, Coach Paul?
Hey, Coach Jay.
How we doing today?
I'm awake.
Another one of those. Another one of those.
Yeah.
Pretty boring day out there. What is up, everybody? Welcome, welcome. If this is your first time here, I am Coach Jay. That is Coach Paul. And this is At the Buzzer, our market recap. The goal of this segment is to review what happened in the markets for the day. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded before, but our goal as traders is to identify opportunity, see how we could have taken advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. If this is our first time meeting, I am Coach Jay. Been a Topstep Performance Coach for a little over a year now. I've been trading for about 11 years, 12 years. I need to update my calendar. Uh, and been trading in the futures markets for the last 5 years or so. And that is Coach Paul. Coach Paul, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Coach Paul. I've been involved in the futures industry for 4 decades. Started off on the floor, traded on the floor, started trading off the floor in 2000 around 2005, and I've been trading consistently since then. I've had many different experiences in the business, but I've also here to help new traders or sometimes seasoned traders get over the hump and become successful using some of my experience and knowledge.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Coach. We will get into the news for the day. Wasn't too much on the calendar. We did have new home sales coming out a little bit better than expected. Month over month change was down 4.7%. What was expected was 5.3%. We also had the crude oil inventories out, and that number is always it's like the lotto if they get anywhere even close to the numbers. Crude inventories out. And what came out was negative 4.47 million. What was expected was negative 1.43 million. So another huge miss. I think we should start placing bets on how close, like the over under on that crude oil number. See how far off they can be
Yeah,
because they always miss.
yeah, and it seems to me that it doesn't really matter, does it?
Not at all.
Um, there's enough oil. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. We also
Um,
know that we do have Micron earnings coming out, which is probably one of the bigger earnings that we'll see for the week. We can see it right up here on the Trader Hub in Topstep X. Earnings per share came out at 1.1, $1.18. What's estimated was $1.12. Adjusted revenue, this seems wrong to me. Where I'm seeing 7.75 million and the estimate was 7.66 billion. So I think that might be a little bit of a misprint. And if it's not, uh, watch
don't
out.
own don't own
Somebody's in
Micron
trouble.
if that's the case.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, somebody's in trouble if that's the case. So I think that might be a little bit of a typo there. And if it is, then Micron is doing well, actually better than what they expected. Of course, we have their earnings call coming out, and they'll give forward guidance and things like that. But just one of the bigger earnings reports that we have coming out. All right. The way we start every segment by looking at the quote board. Let's see what our biggest percentage movers were for the day. Let me make sure I get the right screen up. And to the downside, we had the Mexican peso down 1.7%.
wow, that's a new
Uh,
one.
yeah, it is. RBOB futures down 1.36%. That's actually in place. And crude oil down 2.42% for our biggest percentage mover to the downside. For the upside, we have nat gas up 1.18%, soybean oil up 1.78%, and wheat futures up 2.08% for our biggest percentage mover to the upside. As far as the major four go, we already talked about crude oil down 2.42. We have the S&Ps down 0.19%, the Nasdaq up 0.3%, and gold up 0.24% to round out our big four. Not a lot of movement. Well, not a lot of directional movement, I'll say. Pretty
Yeah,
boring markets. I was talking
difficult.
to. Go ahead, Coach.
It's a great point. Not much directional movement.
Right. The For me, I was talking to Coach Paul before we got on here. I took two trades today. One of them being this trade that you can see right at the close. And I normally don't even do this, but I had not taken a trade in this account all day, and it looked like a pretty good setup. I set a buy stop above 21.98 and a take profit 10 points higher than it with 5 micros. Took the trade for the day, and that was the one trade on this account. And in the other account that I trade, took a long this morning in the Nasdaq, and that was about it. Spent my time watching Topstep TV, got outside for a little bit, took care of some work that I needed to. Not too many trades for me today. Uh, but let's look at the Nasdaq on a 30-minute. I'm going to take these executions off so we don't. I don't like the way those personally look on the chart. But here we go with the Nasdaq on the 30-minute chart, coach. We've been talking about this a little bit. We have this 200 moving average, the white line here. We're above it. We checked back into it last night. And again, the 200 moving average doing what the 200 moving average does, acting as a support in the Nasdaq on the 30-minute here. The 20 and the 50 still kind of braided around each other, and that's you know showing us that we're not really getting that directional movement. Kind of this slow channeling upwards in the Nasdaq right now. Uh, Still looks strong, but just not a big push in the market right now. Uh,
Boy, um, it stayed in a tight range today. Our average true range has come down quite a bit, as witnessed by volatility, but the average true range was 337,
mhm.
coming off of 400 plus just a week ago. Today's range was 209.
Wow.
So we're we're really, like I said, it's you can find it boring for directional traders, and might have been a great day for you if you're a reversion to the mean, or I mean, it's all relative, but the bottom line is ranges are and volatility starting to come in. I would I would expect some. We talked about this yesterday. There's coiling action. There should be soon some breakout with some directional movement is the probability. When that happens, I don't know.
Right. And Joe, you are correct. The market did not hit the 200 moving average. Uh, it came within 6 points of it. I'm counting that as a hit in in the Nasdaq. Close enough. Close enough. The Nasdaq's like a grenade, right? Kind of just any level close to it. If it gets there, I'm counting that as using the 200 moving average as a support. But you are correct. It did not trade to it. Uh, Go ahead, coach.
Well, it's an area too.
Yep.
So if I put a bid there, most likely I'm not going to get filled.
Correct.
So one of the ways I look at is, 10 points, um, an average true range. Um, but it's still above it. The idea is it's still above it. Don't get short in the hole.
Yeah.
Once it trades under it, you might want to consider a short if that's but I use it as a directional indicator. And direction's still up.
Direction is still up for sure. Overnight was a pretty nice short. This is that 30-minute Globex open that we've been talking about with anchored VWAP attached to it, the session VWAP. It left the range after the first 2 hours, once volume started to come in during that Asian session. Really nice trade overnight, right? If you were short, there was a 100-point move down. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
you could find a 40-point trade in there somewhere. That could have been your session. And once we claimed back above it, then the market looking pretty bullish here, um, going into the New York session. Uh, excuse me. We'll go down to, oh, actually, I'm going to go back real quick to a 30-minute chart. I'm going to go back to July 17th. July 17th, there was a 30-minute candle that Where is it? It is 30-minute candle at 7 a.m. It's this one. Why am I picking this one? It seems very
Yes,
random.
coach. Yeah.
Seems very random. It's not, I promise. Uh, there was you guys know I use Quantower, so there was a volume anomaly that happened in this 30-minute candle at 7 a.m. Eastern time on July 17th. This candle had negative 1600 delta in that 30-minute period, and what that means, there were more sellers than buyers. And for that time frame, was trading a decent amount of volume, right? 7 a.m., there's really no news that's usually scheduled around that time. So I looked at that and said, you know what, that's something to be aware of. And then if we fast forward to today, what just happened? Nope. Did I choose the wrong candle? I think I chose the wrong candle. Hold on a second. This is why I like Quantower. Where was it? Was it
It's
this
an
one?
adjustment process. Anytime
Yeah.
you're using a new
New platform
platform,
problems. I lost the
um,
candle.
but I am becoming accustomed to it. I haven't made the full transition yet, but just like anything, some are a lot easier, some are tough. Um,
Where did I just
but
do that? All right, guys. I lost the candle. It was somewhere around here. But the candle I framed out on Quantower was the high of the day today, 2271. I actually put the picture in the Coach J Discord, so if you want to check it out, it's in there. I'll try to go find it. But there was a candle. The low of the candle was 2271. The high of it is 2350. So I'm looking at that range as this is where a big seller came in at one point in the market. We have not traded that range since then. So I want to see the market's response when we get back up to these prices. Again, that range is going to be 2270 up to 2350. Right. Um, go go down to a 3-minute chart, and from the time the New York session started, this looked like a pretty good long to me here. This was the one trade I mentioned I took, where we had the 3-minute opening range established. The market starts to close outside of that range pretty early. VWAP looks bullish, although not leaving the range yet. When I see this happen, I'm leaning towards the long side. We have VWAP for the session, including the overnight session lower here. I'm looking at this as buyers are in control above it. So when we get this flush down to 2150 and we don't hold below it, this is where I'm looking to buy. My first buy was at 2151. Because at least worst case scenario, I can trade back up to VWAP, and I think I took this trade up to 2200, and that was my one trade for the morning. I was done after that. Especially after seeing the market run another 70 points without me. I closed it at 200 when we saw some hesitation, and stepped away. Stepped away. Didn't
oh,
Go ahead, coach.
when you stepped away, is it because you?
Bless you.
Sorry about that. Was it because you didn't feel anything, or you didn't see any opportunity?
Oh no, there was a ton of opportunity. I literally could have taken the trade 3 minutes after, but I closed it out, and I think I was telling you earlier, the coach, I didn't really feel like trading today. And I could feel it going into the session. I had some work that I had to do before the session started. So didn't really have my full focus. Saw a clean setup and said, hey, I could take this one trade. Um, and that could be it for the day, right? If it's a good setup, it was a two lot on the minis. So, dollar wise, and I don't want to really count the dollars, but dollar wise, it was a really nice trade. And that was it. I could have got right back because here's an A+ setup for me. And once this played out and I looked at the markets again and saw that I missed this, that's when I said, okay, I'm just done for the day. I'm going to call it.
So why I brought that up is that's a very mature trader mentality, um, because it's performance. You're there to perform. If you're not mentally ready to perform, sometimes we'll just get in and just start just trying to make money
Hmm.
and lose our focus.
Correct.
I've done it. Um, and at that point, recognizing is better off. Like I'm not feeling it. Um, it's just one of those smarter decisions is to step away.
Absolutely.
So I have to commend you for that, coach.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've tried to force trades, and again, my read was right. The playbook, and you guys can see it, right? We've talked about this trade so many times. This is a plus 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 here, right? This is if I'm leaning into size on a trade, this is the one I'm going to lean into, uh, because this is just the perfect storm, right? Close outside of the opening range, test and rejection of the high of the range, VWAP's leaving it. Um, Perfect wick test of the high of the range. Market saying we're done trading these prices. That's a 70 point, 90 point move with no drawdown. Uh, so when I look at it and it's already 60 points in my favor, if I would have taken it, I'm good. I'll sit it out. Try it again tomorrow. And then after
Um,
that, go ahead, coach.
so yeah, after that, we made that high. Did we have any volume anomalies or just
Not really. I
no?
think the one thing that I was seeing as far as volume goes was a lack of volume, right? Where there wasn't really much on the books. There wasn't really much as far as follow through in either direction. And maybe the market is waiting for news. We do have jobless claims. I think we have Powell speaking at some point this week as well. So maybe the market waiting a little bit. The one volume anomaly that I see is at this 12 p.m. central candle. We can see it here, this kind of exhaustion move where we got back under the New York session VWAP. We actually traded back to, I believe this was 2 day VWAP right at 140. Yeah, there was a 2 day VWAP right at 2140. I can put that on the chart so we can look at it. Right around there. 2 day VWAP right around 2140. Lows of that opening range. We see this volume anomaly. This is the highest volume that we've seen on the day outside of the first hour of trade. And it pushes right into VWAP and kind of sets the range for the day. Um, that was it. That was it, really. But this was a pretty choppy session. Uh, and there's opportunity in this, right? This is a pretty big range. This is 40 points. If you're fading the extremes of it, 40-point trade.
Yeah, there was a few 40-point trades. It's not my kind of day.
Hmm.
Um, I really didn't trade much on my swing trades. I hedged with some options. I- like I said, the average true range, we're almost half of it. So once again, um, if you're looking for direction on a day like today and you lost a little bit of money, that I will define that as good trading. Um, a good trading day doesn't necessarily have to be a money making day. It's an important distinction, and especially to keep your mindset. If you're a range trader today, boy, what was the first hour? Let's look at the point of control and initial balance.
So initial balance was pretty much so initial balance high was right here at this two. We stayed in the initial balance the whole day, right? There was somebody who asked that question about the initial balance, whether or not by the time we stay in the, if we're still in the initial balance by lunchtime, do we stay in it the whole day? I said that. I mean, I think we both said we don't have the numbers on that, but if you're in the chat right now, this is the third day that we've seen this, so you might have identified a pattern that maybe we should all pay attention to. Uh, Initial balance high was 2271. Initial balance low was 2140, and we never left that. Uh, so
And then
go
let's
ahead, coach.
put a VWAP on that initial balance.
VWAP, where do you want to put it?
From on the hourly chart or from the initial
Oh,
balance. If we put an hourly chart, I'd like to do that.
got you. Okay, so here's the first hour. We'll mark it there. Here's the first half an hour. Uh, it was flat.
So it was flat. So when you add that, it gives us some information. It's like that that move has not brought volume urgency. So the VWAP is way down in the beginning, so it was bought early, and then it moved higher, but it didn't. That I would, at the very least, I would need to make a new high before I wanted to buy it. The reason I brought it, I saw that this morning. I'm like, "Nah, that's the DNA of lackluster trading to me. Like that's just a price movement. Price moved away from volume and didn't continue. If that VWAP was up near to the top, that'd be a different story, right? I mean, that would
Correct.
be urgent.
Correct.
It's far away, and as we saw, we went back to the lows and traded in the middle of the range. Um, I've been watching that lately, and I really like that an initial balance and see where the VWAP is, and make decisions from that.
So, Bradley had asked on the trade that I said that I would have taken, which was the A plus setup, but I missed. Where would the stop be on that trade? Great question. On this one, I'll just frame this out again. Here's that 3 minute opening range. Here's VWAP attached to it, and what I'm calling the A plus is this here, where we're rejecting right at the high of that opening range. For me, because this is such a clean setup, I want to know pretty quickly if I'm wrong on this. So for me, and I might be doing this wrong, and some people might have some other suggestions. I'm gonna get out at 50% of the opening range because the way I'm reading this is I could set a wider stop, but if I get stopped out, then the way I think about it is I might get better trade location somewhere else, right? Where if I enter at the high of the range, if I get stopped out at 50% of the range, okay. If it's going to continue to sell off and VWAP is going to stay up here, then I'm going to take a second entry somewhere closer to the low of the range and be extremely comfortable with that trade, right? So personally, the way I would manage it, I would rather get stopped out quick. Once I get this setup here, right? VWAP leaving the range, rejecting at the high, and then if the market wants to turn around and trade through the range, but VWAP stays up, then I will get in somewhere closer to the low of that range.
Good question. We have a question from Batsky.
Okay.
I want to save that so after our review, it's a very good question. But Batsky, we will get back to that question after we review the markets because it's a really good question about trading and risk management.
Okay. Cool. After that, we got back below the New York session VWAP. We got some closes below it, some trades the other way, but again, not really much. If you guys caught Stanley's segment on Topstep TV, Ask with the pros. I really liked his trade. He was looking to go short at 2,200, and I normally don't like trading right at whole number levels. But in this case, Stanley had a great trade on. He was looking for 140s at the low. He didn't take it on these initial moves here, but he did take the trade. Was really patient. I really like this trade because we're under VWAP, really no volume at a major level. In order for us to see some, this market push above 200, we're going to need to see some convinced buyers here, and they hadn't been there really all session. He was looking for a trade down to 140, ultimately didn't get it. We kind of rejected in this opening range, but a really nice trade that he had on there. 30-point trade, stuck to his guns. And with the stop loss, the chat was saying, hey, you know what, his stop loss is too tight. I actually didn't agree with that, because of this, right? I think he knew that if this move is going to be wrong, it's going to look something like this. So I'll just take a smaller stop out on it. And then I think he actually said, if it gets past a certain point, I'm going to flip long. So really nice trade that he had on there. One of the few trades that I saw on Topstep TV today, where I think the house account stayed pretty flat. I know D had some crude oil trades as well. Nick traded the S&Ps, but took what the market presented in this trade here. Uh, Go ahead, Coach.
No, you know what? And this is a good question. It's he defined that. I like what you're saying. He defined that trade. He said, "I'm willing to risk this, bring in the stop because that was part of what he saw and the trade."
Hmm.
Um, a different trade, you might have a different stop. I mean,
Right.
um, that's his read. But the most important thing is he framed out his risk before he made the decision.
Yep. Yeah. The stop may have been too tight for your strategy, but for him, he's just like, hey, you know what? Above here, I'm wrong, and that's okay. Uh, and even when the market looked like it was going to go and stop him out, it was, I'm in this position, going to hold on to it. So Stanley, if you're watching, shout out to you. Really nice trade. Not easy to do what you just did on Topstep TV either, where you're trading in front of 4,000 people for the first time. Um, no one ever wants to be wrong in that position. I'll just let everyone know. Um, and we all know that we are going to be wrong, but no one ever wants to be. So there's that added pressure for there. So really good job, Stanley. Uh, all right, so I don't have too much else on the Nasdaq. The S and P's kind of did the same thing. S and P's rejected at this 5,800 level, major psych level. Everyone knows when we trade above 5,800 in the S and P's, and in order for us to see us trade above there, we need some convinced buyers. And same story, they weren't there today. Uh, you know, th- Anytime I see a market pushing into a major level, coach, and there's just a lack of participation, to me, it usually means there's a pretty good trade coming in the opposite direction, right? Let's think about all of the buyers who may have been long overnight in this. Uh, if you bought it during the London session, you were having a great time. Uh, where you could have bought it at 57.75 and been up 23 points in your trade and holding it, maybe looking for 5,800. But as soon as the market doesn't hit 5,800 and kind of stalls out up there, uh, I'm taking profits, at least on part of my position, and that's the move that we got. So
That was on the opening, right?
correct, correct. Yeah. So this
So
is, yep.
the way I look at that, I've noticed it since you talked about it. Those are a big levels, the evens, the odds, whatever you want to call them. Um, and I would compare it to weightlifting. Maybe you can power lift 550, and you put another 50 pounds on it, and you get up to and you can't. Your arms start shaking. You don't have the power to get through the next level, and then it just comes right back down. That is seen to be the case on that trade this morning.
Absolutely. And kind of just held that view up the entire time down. The ES to me looked like a bit of a better trade than the Nasdaq once it eventually started going because it wasn't a lot of overlap. Got back below that New York session VWAP, held it, and just selling from there. Uh, mhm. Anything else you got on the S&Ps, coach? Let's look at a 30-minute real quick. We'll pull up the moving averages, and the S&Ps actually did test the 200 moving average on the 30-minute,
Yeah,
traded
they were a
below it.
little weaker than the Nasdaq
Yep.
for the first time when in recent memory. It's usually been the other way around. Um, Still held it, but it was within. Once again, we had a very thin range, um, and it was in between the my first resistance and first support, 65 and 05, which is 40 points, and it stayed between that. They never touched it. So um, this is like the third all week. This has been going on, and once again, it held the 200. But what's happening? It's losing its momentum. I think as it's almost like a pinch. Um, it's coming to a place where it's going to have to move out of. That could happen tomorrow. Let's keep an eye on that 200. Um, we've said watching the ATR, which is a function of volatility, as it gets tighter and tighter, a move is going to come out of that. That's what we're witnessing now. So be prepared. I think it's going to happen. Maybe tomorrow. There's Powell might make a slip and say interest rates have to go back up. I don't know, but something is going. Keep an eye out. Something's going to happen. It's going to break out of this range, one side or the other. Um, that's my experience. Just like Nasdaq, S&P was even tighter. Um, there were some good opportunities, like you just mentioned.
Yep.
And then we do a anchored VWAP from the first bar of the day, which is most likely the highest volume. The eight
From the New York session.
from the New York session.
Got you. That is this one right here.
All right. There you go. Uh,
Yeah.
so I find this very, whether we're 3 minute, 5 minute, whatever that first one, um, start watching it, because as VWAP develops, it's going to give you. I mean, right there, I wanted to buy it. Actually, I was long and then took a small loss after the. It just wasn't going. I'm like, well, if it's going to be good, we should see buyers going through the highs. I didn't want to get short. I eliminate that myself, but I found that I just find that very helpful, uh, to put a VWAP on the opens.
Yep.
It, like I said, it's not what I think it's going to do. It's what the volume is doing. And, you
Agreed.
know, they don't want it. I don't want it. So um, that's a great tool. I would suggest anyone, whatever your opening range is, to attach that.
Agreed. We got a question from Joe. Can I explain the 2-day VWAP? Yep. It is VWAP that spans the course of 2 days. So where I'm anchoring that to, so we have today's session, and the easy way to do this is I'm on a 30-minute chart. All of this high cluster of volume, this is today's session. Then we have the overnight. This is yesterday's New York session. Then we have the overnight. So I'm going to anchor it to the overnight session prior to all of this, right? So this is September 23rd at 5 p.m. Central Time. I'm considering that 2-day VWAP. So going into tomorrow, my 2-day VWAP is going to be anchored from last night at 5 p.m., right? So just a little bit of a different area. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Anything else you got on the S&Ps, coach?
No.
All right, cool. One thing we talked about, we are
I'm
going to
good
move
there.
over to crude oil and gold, but we've mentioned this a few times before. Sometimes when the S&Ps and the Nasdaq are choppy, there are other equity markets that are moving. Let's look at the Dow today. Looks like a completely different story, right? Where the Dow still kind of in this range, still a little bit choppy, but maybe a wider range to trade. I'm on the 30-minute chart now, coach, and we have the Dow not using that 200 moving average as a support, actually selling through it. And
Boy,
we can see the angle on the 20 and the 50. This looks like it's turning.
yeah, it certainly does. And notice it closed below that
Mm-hmm.
versus bouncing. So, um, and it's been holding that.
Yep.
Ideally, if you bought it when it went across it, you get out here. You didn't get out at the high, but you took a good chunk of that. But that we're day trading in this. So what? And once again, we have a high volume event. Is that the opening first half an hour?
Yes, it is.
And so what happens then after the first half an hour? Well, let's frame that candle out.
Yep. I actually want to do it on a 3 minute. If we can go down to a
Okay.
shorter time frame, because it happened early.
Yep.
And
No. Yeah, it did.
hopefully you can't hear my dogs barking. If you can, let me know, and I'll go shut up real quick. But she's
Who who let the dogs out, Coach?
yeah. Can you actually hear her?
Barely.
Okay.
It's not an interference.
All right. Cool. So 3 minute candle here. This one happened very early, right? This is another A plus plus setup, right? 3 minute opening range. We left the range early. After 6 minutes, we were closing outside of that range. The market's done trading these prices. We can see the angle of that VWAP pretty. If you want that added confirmation, I don't. There's no problem with that, right? Where we have seen price go before and VWAP stay in the range, and then the market completely reverse. So if you're looking at this pattern, it's okay to wait for VWAP to leave. It's another 9 minutes that you have to wait. We test back up towards the range. VWAP is now leaving. This is great confirmation. Set your risk where you would like, right? It could go 50%. It could go to the other side of the range. Coach, it could go 2 ATRs. And if I'm getting in short here, let's say I don't get this top tick. Let's say I get in short right here. 2 ATRs on a 3 minute chart is going to be 62 points, right around 50% of that opening range. And if it gets back there, then that trade idea is invalidated. But it was never invalidated. Just a really
No,
nice trend.
I didn't. I wasn't watching it. That could have been gold. It could have been
Anything.
pork bellies or rice. That trade right there, where we have urgency. Is that it? So we have that opening. And
Hmm.
if we go back and close, we don't know what's going to happen. We'll just show where the opening and go step bar by bar. So we have the opening. This looks pretty darn friendly.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Yep. Dow's been
Uh,
making all time highs. It looks good.
okay, so I'm favoring that. Now I put the 200 moving average. It's above that. Um, Now, boom, as we go right there, there's the highest volume of the day. Let me move out of the way here.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Don't worry about it. Hey,
There it is.
I'll move you, coach. I'll move you. There you go.
So we have that a big volume, and it can't hold it. It kind of the same thing as you know powerlifting, and you can't get over that next level,
Mhm.
right? It's not going to go down slowly. It's like that's why we have spotters.
Right.
Um, but right away, that buying was rejected, and there's no J candle because it never gets back above that high. So if I was long, I'm out of there. Recognize whatever that loss is, I'm out.
Hmm.
Now, if I'm just objective, I'm reading the opening, and what did the opening tell us?
There were no more buyers in this market. Sellers taking control.
And we see that the volume is skewing downwards. We break out of that first 3 minutes, and then VWAP leaves it.
Yep. So Joe has a
It's
question. And go ahead, coach. Finish your statement. I'm gonna answer Joe's question.
no at that point we know. I think it's a better sell later than it was on if you sold the high by accident
Agreed.
because now you have more information.
Got confirmation. So Joe is
Yeah.
saying all these hindsight trades look great. Any suggestions for catching these during the session? Uh, Understand what you're looking for first, right? This is a pattern that if I see this in any market, I'm going to take the trade because I've seen it play out so many times. So first, I need to know what it is that I'm looking for, and then it's no longer a read; it's a react to what you've already planned for, right? So Joe, if you're looking to add this trade to your trading strategy, right? This setup to your trading strategy, understand all of the components of it, right? There's an opening range established. There's a candle close outside of the range. There's VWAP leaving the range. There's price testing and rejecting that range. All of those components lead to this trade in any market. If one of those components are missing and we're trying to preempt the trade, then we may get a different result, right? So if you're trying to catch these in real time, it's a checklist, right? I have Opening range established, check. Market closes outside of the range, check. VWAP is closing outside of the range also, check. That's a B plus trade. Then I have the market testing that range and rejecting it, another check. That's an A plus. Go with it. Why am I saying I need this test and rejection? Because I could get short here. I could get short at 52,508 at these lows because I see the market leaving. There is still the potential for the market to test and reject that range. Coach, I said 2 ATR stop, right? And you use 2 ATR
Yes.
stop all the time. And I'm saying 2 ATR stop because I got that from you. If I got short
Hmm.
here at 52,507, I had the direction of the day correct. If I use a 2 ATR stop and I got short at 52.10, I would have been stopped out of that trade before the market eventually did exactly what I expected it to do. And this is why patience is necessary. Could you have got right back in the trade again? Absolutely. If you see it, but how many of us, especially early on in our trading journey, are going to jump right back in that trade after we've gotten stopped out, right? Because I could imagine a lot of traders taking this short here in the Shark Tank, right? You're short in the hole at this point. I could imagine a lot of traders taking that trade, getting stopped out, and saying, "You know what? I'm wrong," and then going long here. How many times has that happened to anyone in the chat? How many times has that happened to you, Coach?
Oh, I used to happen to me all the time.
All the time. So allow the market to give you, excuse me, give you a better trade location. And for me, on this specific setup, right now, this is just one playbook setup that I use. There's a couple of other ones, but on this one, it's let the market retest and reject that range. And then when we get that, now this is a better reward over risk, right? Where I would have gotten stopped out here with 2 ATRs. Maybe you could have set your stop in the range, but that's tough.
Coach, I would you just one other thing is versus hindsight, we're teaching reading a market. And I just went through. We went through this. Is the market looked really good coming into the opening. So managing risk or hindsight is more important than projecting what direction the market's going to move. And this one, if I and I was in it. I mean, that wasn't the Dow, but it was S&Ps and many micro Nasdaq.
Nice.
Once it broke out, I took a small loss. We're trying to get, we're trying to teach reading the market and understanding when the market's working against you or with you. Um, and this happens, you've been with us for a while. This type of trade or action, it's more action,
Hmm.
happens in 30 different markets.
Yep. Yes, it does. So yeah, going over this is the Dow. Just why are we talking about this? We don't talk about the Dow often. When the Nasdaq and ES are pretty choppy, the Dow and the Russell seem to be trend days. Here it is on the Russell. It's the same exact trade. This one, right? You want that test and rejection because if I get short here, where oh yeah, VWAP's leaving, I got to get short. This entry is pretty far away from that VWAP, right, Coach? Thank you for that, Coach
Yes.
Paul. Coach Paul called me out one day, and I'm just like, "Damn it, man! I'm getting these trades right. I want to catch the whole trend, but something is off." And he's just like, "Well, how far are your entries away from volume?" What he means by that is you're entering down here, VWAP is up here, and you know in your playbook that you're waiting for a closer entry to VWAP. If I got short here because I thought the market was going without me, 2 ATR stop, I would have gotten stopped out of the trade again, and then the market goes. If I shorted at VWAP on an angled VWAP, let's see it here. 2 ATRs would have been 6 points at this point. Trade location matters. I am not stopped out of that trade and I can hold it. I can hold through the little bit of turbulence here. I'm not upset about a trade that, I don't flip my bias or none of that, right? take a trade in a good trade location. If I'm shorting down here, at which are the lows of the New York session, maybe we can make an overnight low, but don't trade an account size that's large enough to push the market lower here. So I need to make sure that there's some potential flow that is going to keep pushing us.
Yeah, and that requires patience
Yep.
because that's a lot of heat to take.
Hmm.
That's I'm still very aggressive when I catch this. Why I asked Coach Jay when I could tell that it's like uh, my mentor Peter Stottlemyre. One of the last lessons I had with him, he told me that, and it really helps. So um, and you get to see volume how it's reacting, not versus just price. We know it's breaking in the price, but what is that in relation to the volume? It's a great point.
Absolutely. Coach, let's move over to crude oil real quick. We got about 15 minutes left. And I know you did want to ask the chat if there were any questions that anyone had.
Yeah,
Um,
we have a few backed up. So
okay, let's do that.
let's finish that and we'll get to the questions. Boy, the
Uh,
crude.
just selling overnight. Let's go to a 30-minute. Crude has been a really interesting market lately. Not really choosing a direction, pretty violent, um, but presenting some opportunities. Here is the 30-minute opening range from last night, Coach. Really tight opening range. Um, we can all guess what VWAP is going to look like here.
It has to. It can't be any other way.
Right. Yeah, we can all guess, right? And just some really nice opportunities. Most of them coming overnight, where I really like this as well, where we got this is the same as the 3-minute trade, right? Where we have VWAP leaving the range. We have a test of the range here. Let's see. This is on a 30-minute chart at this point. And there was a question from Bradley. The ATR is going to be on the time frame that you're taking the trade, right? So if you enter on a 30-minute chart, use the 30-minute ATR. If you enter on
Yeah.
a 5-minute chart, use the 5-minute ATR.
Because remember, the computation is based upon the volume that has been transacted in that time period. So it's going to be a different with different time periods.
Coach, right here on this test of the 30-minute opening range, this is during the London session open. At this point, the 30-minute ATR was 20 ticks. A 40 tick stop loss would have put you way out of the way. And really nice trade on the day on a
Wow.
pattern that we've seen repeat time and time again. Let's say you didn't catch it then. You had another opportunity here where price is going up, but what's volume doing? Average volume is decreasing, right? The average price for the volume that's trading is decreasing. Price is going up. That's a bit of a divergence. So when we get back into this range, a really nice place to again take a short, and now you're in a better short than the average price here, right? We're 30 ticks better than the average price here. Worst case scenario, I can trade back to that average, but if they're ready to make money and continue pushing this lower, and sellers take control, then it's just a really nice trade.
Coach,
Mhm.
what time was that? Was that the New York Open?
This here,
Yeah.
this was still very early in the morning. This is 5 a.m. New York time.
Wow.
So
So that was mostly Europe.
correct. Mostly Europe. By the time we came back down, we bounced off of whatever that was. We marked that out a couple
Yeah.
days ago. Uh, Sometimes you got to leave drawings on your charts. But we know we had inventories out today, right? We know we had crude inventories out today. That happened at 10. We are going to do gold right after this. Crude inventories out at 10. Is it 10 or 10:30 Eastern time?
Eastern time, 10:30.
10:30. Perfect. All right. Sorry about the flashbang.
It's all right. My eyes will recover sometime. It's all right.
10:30 Eastern time, we have inventories. Not much of a reaction to it. Uh, Again, still kind of holding this VWAP, chopping around. I would frame out that inventories range, and we could anchor a VWAP there. That's news, right? What did the market say? Same thing. From the time inventories happened, price moved around, but volume never chose a direction. Uh, Eventually, it did choose a direction to the downside. We see VWAP leaving that range. By the time it left the range, it was pretty late. But this is where I would kind of read, and I maybe I don't want to short at VWAP or buy at VWAP really. In that case, kind of looking for an extension in either direction and going from there. But just a really nice trend day lower in crude oil started overnight. Um, Presented opportunity really on both sides where, you know, here's a nice long trade where you didn't even have to get the market direction right. We had $1.20 move to the upside before we continued to sell off.
And once again, in that you could, we were so far at that low, we were so far away from the volume.
Hmm.
Um, if you wanted to sell it, measure that, because the move is most likely at its zenith. You know,
Right.
it- I believe me, I know how to get short down. I used to get short down there and
Me
either
too.
take a lot of heat, or then I'm when I was really young, I would say, oh well, I'm now shoot, I got to get that money back. Now I buy it and it goes back down. Um, just as we said, when this is the theme of today's show is understood. We've been watching VWAP the last 2 days. If you haven't seen the section with what's the author? Coach, what's the author of the
Anchor VWAP book,
book
Brian Shannon.
Anchor View? Brian Shannon was yesterday. Watch it. Um, so that's why we're you know we're focusing a lot on VWAP today.
Absolutely.
But understanding that when you're away from that, it could go down, but probabilities are that you're going to. If you don't like taking heat, and by the way, I don't think that many people out
Like
there are
it?
enjoying taking heat.
No. If I'm on a beach somewhere, yeah, absolutely. I like the heat, but
Yeah, love the heat. So great point on that bounce.
uh, let's see what we got. Any questions that you're seeing in the chat right now, Coach? I'm gonna switch over to gold real quick. Any questions you want to answer in the chat?
Coach Jay, we have anchored VWAP on Top Step X. Yes, we're using it right now. If you go quickly, Coach Jay will show you how to get it.
Drawing tools on the left side. About halfway down, you have forecasting and measurement tools. Click on the right arrow. Halfway down that menu, you have anchored VWAP. Put the star next to it to add it to your favorites. I have my favorites up here in this toolbar, and anchored VWAP is the two candles with a line going through it. I'm going to click there and click on a candle to anchor it
Well, it's pretty easy. It's easier than most other platforms. I got to say that.
for sure. Uh,
All
Gold,
right.
continuing the trend. Just continuing the trend.
Now, is that the 30-minute?
This is the 30-minute.
So let's do a VWAP off of, and remember, gold's a little different than equities, a lot different in that gold trades 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Someone's transacting in gold, and maybe not gold futures, but it's a worldwide commodity. So last night, if we anchor, I like to anchor off two things: the New York Open
Hmm.
and the opening session on the evening, and we had a pretty big range.
Hold on. I think I got the wrong candle. The first 30 is this one.
Oh, we had a lot, a small range. I was actually kind of surprised by that. Look what we did. We held that VWAP held. We had that rally, and what's that price? 25.04.
What do we got here?
Excuse me, 20. I'm still in the fives.
Yeah.
27.05, something like oh 04.
20, I'm
And
seeing 2682 at the low of this range, 2683 at the high.
Okay. And then we break out of the range. VWAP goes with it. And we have this huge move. It looks like it's going to go to the moon.
Yep.
Um, what price is that high?
26.94.9.
26.94.9. If you bought it, well, if you sold it on the opening, let's just look at it that way. What is your risk?
2 ATRs.
Two ATRs.
On a 30-minute, that would be 9
Go to the other
points.
side if we sold it.
Oh, if I sold it, my bad. 9 points.
It's $900. I don't know too many accounts at Topstep Combines that can afford that.
Maybe you do it on
Oh,
a
but if I
3-minute.
do micros,
Could afford that.
it's $90. I'm still wrong, but at $9, you don't have to wait to get stopped out. If you see that you traded outside the range, get out. If it goes through, even if it just closes, if you see VWAP close outside of the range, get out. There's, when I say your risk, and I want to make this clear, that's what I'm willing to lose. Doesn't mean I have to lose that much. So in this case, before it went up $9, VWAP left that opening range, so we have buying. That was good. I mean, it looked like it was going to go up $50 at one point. I mean, it was very strong.
Yeah, looked very strong on a higher time frame. Looks very strong. 2,700 feels like a magnet at this point. And maybe if everyone's looking for it, gold's going to turn around and do the exact opposite. But we talked about this yesterday. This trend looks very strong to the upside, and maybe slowing down, but I don't really see it turning yet. Today we did have some overlap in that 20 and 50 moving average, where I think the 20, did it close
Yeah,
below it? They're like at the same price right now, pretty much.
yeah, the braiding.
Yep.
So let's look at the daily too to get an idea of the overall trend.
Yeah, it's
Different
increasing.
perspective, huh?
So what do you think about this doji on the daily candle here?
I just think we have a small range.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't. We've had a couple of them. We had one sometime last week, almost the same. Every time we get up to these highs, we get one.
Yeah, we
Look at
got
that. Well, there's one. Go to
some
the
some
right.
yeah, something like this. Yeah,
Yeah, but even off the highs, so go right about
this one here. There we
5
go.
feet there. Again,
Yep.
we break down, hold support, and then rally. So if that's the case, and remember we've seen this, it goes up to new highs, comes back down.
Hmm.
For some reason, there's no buying. I wouldn't be surprised tomorrow if we have a break, but I want to buy that break. That's when I use the half an hour.
Yep. Yeah, and if we break, just going off of this pattern here, where we had, looking at this candle where significant upside movement, we have the doji come back and respect that candle. The next one I would be looking at is this one here, right? Significant price action kind of broke us out of that range, from the doji back up to the high. High of that candle 2650, low 2611. 2650 it's a whole number level. Wouldn't be surprised at a retest of that whole number level. Not saying that it is going to happen, but does look a little bit extended. And with a doji, you know, by nature, that's a indecision candle, happening below a major level. Not saying that anything is going to happen, but I would not be surprised at a retest of this candle before we continue up. Um, we are at time, and I think Coach Hoop is starting a session in Discord soon.
Oh,
Uh, does anyone else have any questions or any questions that we didn't get to? I got one from
yeah.
Marcus. Marcus here. Do you trade combines more aggressively with your size? I find it so frustrating when I slow play a combine. It's a mental hurdle I have. I size up too much when trying to get funded. Shenrong is also, talking to me about this a little bit in the chat. You can trade the combines aggressively, but if you haven't passed one doing that, why? Don't rush, right? Sometimes slow is fast. And if you're, think about how much time you've spent trying to rush through a combine. And then if you would have just done it slowly, you would have got to the destination faster and safer, right? Think about, we've used the speed limit example before, right? I'm in New York. If I wanted to go visit Coach Paul in Chicago, I could start driving right now and drive 120 miles an hour. I'm probably going to get pulled over and thrown in a jail cell before I get there, right? Or I could do the speed limit, get there. It might take a little longer, but I'm going to get there safely. So, uh, consider that in your trading. You know that you're rushing, just slow yourself down, right? There's no benefit to rushing, and you're conditioning your brain to think about a certain profit amount in a short period of time, right? If I use 15 contracts on the Nasdaq and make a 10-point trade, that's $3,000, right? I'm conditioning my brain to think about $3,000 in every 10-point move. When you then get to the XFA and you can only trade 3 contracts, your brain is conditioned to see 3,000 and you're going to see 600. And now you're going to try to figure out how to make that 3,000. Just don't do this to yourself. Slow down.
In the words of the great John Wooden, be quick, don't hurry.
There you go.
So I have to answer this question before we go from
Hmm.
Batsky.
Okay.
Coach, I'm struggling between managing my risk and let the trade breathe. Sometimes I see a trade at my level, but the invalidation is a bit too far to my liking. But I took it with my normal stop loss. But I want to let the trade breathe. The potential loss is too high for me, so I got stopped more often before it takes off. How do you manage a trade like that? Two things: either you have to accept the level of risk before you make the trade, or don't take it. Number two, I don't know what you're trading, but you could size down. So what I was saying, if you're trading mini S&P, maybe you go to 5 micros. If you're trading 5 micros, maybe you go to 3 micros. Size down, then that keeps it within acceptable loss for you. Then you're more comfortable. I believe that, you're more comfortable if you, like Coach just said it, if you have too much on, right?
Yeah,
You're not comfortable with the risk. Because now it has to work versus let's see this play out, room to breathe. So when you see that, I would say trade down, put on a smaller size.
absolutely. And I think Coach Hoop says he's going to start a little bit later. So if we do have any more questions or conversation, I think that's a really great point, Coach. And what Batsky is looking at is setting stops based on market information, which is where we should all set our stops, right? Your stop shouldn't be based on a dollar amount. You should, I think we've said it before, you can't fit the market into your account as much as you try. So knowing where the market is invalidated for that trade and then trading the contract size that makes sense for your account is the way to do it. So great response there, Coach. I have nothing else. Coach, if you got any final words before we go, let me make sure I got to all my notes and we will get out of here.
Actually, I'll finish on what we just discussed.
Okay.
Accepting the risk before you take the trade. In this case, if it's too big, size down. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, really, um, it's relative. So adjusting your size is an option, and sometimes it's the best option.
Absolutely. All right. So remember Pass with the Pros. If you saw the new segment on Topstep TV today, at that after one of them, I think is my new favorite segment on the show. Was really cool to watch. We had trader Stanley on, who said Rips was his favorite, you know, trader on Topstep TV. Team calls up Rips and says, "Hey, get in here. We got somebody who loves how you trade." Called Rips in, kind of was able to go back and forth with Rips on the show, talk out a really nice trade. If you want to be a part of that, I'm gonna drop the link in the chat to Pass with the Pros. Make sure you fill out exactly what they're looking for there. Dolby is the one reading these, and he said it on air today. He's like, "If you don't do what I'm asking for, I'm just not even reading it." So if you want to get on the show, make sure you put in exactly what information they're looking for. Dolby's going to read it, reach out to you. I think they require a Zoom video as well. Not a Zoom video for payouts, just to get on the show. Um, and Fill that out there,
A
and
small price to ask.
right there we go. Adobe will get back to you from there. Also, Trustpilot. If you like what we are doing here, please take a moment to review us on Trustpilot. That's not just for Coach Paul and I. That's for Topstep in as a whole. The program, what you're trading, the content that you're getting, coaching, and XYZ. Fill that out on Trustpilot. Let us know, good or bad, what you want to hear. And selfishly, for Coach Paul and I, hit that like button before you do leave today. I got nothing else.
All right, everybody, have a good evening or morning, depending where you're at, and we'll talk again tomorrow.
We will talk to you tomorrow. I will be on Slow Markets with Dakota tonight. We also have Coach Ray, Coach Vince, and Coach Hoop doing classes in Discord. Content 24/7. Join it, take notes, ask questions, and we will talk to you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.